Welcome back, everybody, to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. I am Devin.
And I'm Nick.
I am your humble host, Devin.
I love the way that you've been kind of diversifying the openings here.
Gotta switch it up.
Yeah.
Because, for the people that are just binging our episodes
constantly.
I mean, granted, the topic is different every week, so it's a different episode. It's a different experience every time.
Of course.
But you gotta, they can't have the same opening every time. That's ridiculous.
That's too much.
That's way too much production work.
You really always think about the people, don't you?
Hey, I look at the analytics and I see the people going back and listening to our early episodes, and I appreciate you.
You are a man of the people.
If nothing else. Always a man of the people.
My favorite thing about the people is I like the variety in comments. Because one, I feel like we engage in some, we don't engage in all, which is just how it is on social media.
Right.
But the YouTube comments versus the social, the TikTok comments versus the Instagram. Yeah. They're all very different.
It's a different walks of life kind of thing.
YouTube really just wants to call you a piece of shit and drag you through the mud.
Yeah.
They're like, you're an idiot. And you're like, well, actually, contextually to the episode, I'm not. But thank you.
If you listen to the bigger picture.
Correct.
Instagram, it's just Gail. It's just my mom.
And shout out to her every time.
Love the interactions.
Exactly. But I also appreciate people supporting us to other commenters.
Yeah,
I gotta say,
gotten
huge
our
thank
back.
you.
Yeah, it's really appreciated. It's you know what? I'm not alone here.
Right. They're like, no, you're the idiot. And I was like, ooh, there's a fight in the comments. I love it every time.
You don't have to face the trolls alone. Right. And that's pretty nice.
And that's life. Yeah. You know, when you don't have to. That's friendship.
That's humanity.
Exactly. You don't have to face the trolls alone.
Speaking of trolls. Nothing related, actually.
Oh, okay.
I was hoping to have a nice segue, but I don't.
I was like, oh, you're talking about trolls today?
Yeah.
A troll in Central Park?
No, the Trolls movie with Justin Timberlake.
Oh, have you seen this?
No.
Okay, so...
Wait, seen which? The movie or the one in Central Park?
Both.
No to both.
You've never seen a troll in Central Park?
No.
It's so cute. It was back in the 90s, when we were kids.
Is this a thing?
An animated movie.
Oh, I thought you were talking about just someone being a troll in Central Park. And it's New York. I would believe it.
How horrifying. And actually probably still exists.
Yeah.
But a troll in Central Park is about a little troll in Central Park. He has a green thumb. And so he makes everything grow.
Oh.
And there's a climax and there's, conflict. And
God, I hope there's a climax.
You ruined a very nice children's movie.
You're welcome.
With your lowbrow jokes.
Yeah, well...
Wow.
I'm nothing but a lowbrow jokester.
Just not about bad. Okay, but the Trolls movie.
Sure.
I haven't seen any of them.
Great.
I'm assuming
Same. No.
not either. However, in the most recent one, there is there's a song. Thank you for the help there.
There's a song in all the Trolls movies. That's the whole shtick of the movies, them singing and bringing back life.
But there's a song called Mount, I think it's called Mount Rageous or something like that. Where is your mind today? How horrifying.
Go ahead.
Called Mount Rageous, and it's kind of a pop thing. It became very popular on TikTok and stuff. And every morning when I rise, it's blasting out of my bathroom for some reason. And so I'm like, great. Now Trolls 3 is a soundtrack that plays in our household.
Is it Brian playing the music, or is it just you don't know where the song is coming from? And we have a bigger concern here of someone living in your apartment.
It's actually Jackie. Jackie waking up needing to play Trolls 3 every morning.
It's going to be a good day. I'm listening to the Trolls. It's going to be a great day. I love this.
We do have access panels though, to the roof in our apartment, and there could be people living in the space between the roof and our apartment, if you will.
Just like Creed?
It is Creed.
Hell yeah. Fuck yeah.
Perfect.
Speaking of Creed.
Your transition's spot
on. Speaking of Creed, if you had to guess, speaking of Creed, if you had to guess what generation of home video game consoles are currently on, what would you say?
What? And you should rephrase your question, because all I can think about is
Creed?
in the lens of Creed home video game system. So tell me more.
All right. So if you had to guess what generation of home video game consoles we're currently on, what would you say?
Like per what console though?
Yeah, like where are we on the first generation, the second generation, etc.?
Oh, fourth.
Okay, locking that in.
No, you out of how many? I don't. It's not a multiple.
No,
it's not
like
a
just a.
Whatever
what do you
I think.
Yeah, you could say 100th. That'd be insane.
I feel like you're throwing me off on that one. I'm gonna go fourth.
Okay, good to know.
Okay,
you're wrong.
Fuckers.
With the popularity of the last generation consoles still making them relevant, being the Nintendo Switch, the big one.
Yep.
We are caught between the 8th and 9th generation of video game consoles.
I was close.
Kind of.
Single digits, baby.
So the 8th generation consists of the Wii U, the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. And the 9th generation consists of the Xbox Series X and S, as well as the PlayStation 5.
Oh, okay.
So what determines a generation of home video game consoles?
It's like you read my mind.
I know. That's the next question on my bullet list. It is primarily what the console can do and the tech inside of the machine.
Okay.
And really what makes the list, what makes the cut of a generation is only consoles that share like a competitive space in the market make the cut for that generation. So like there's been countless other like attempts at a console that just never sold enough to be considered one of the heavy hitters of that generation. And fun fact, a new generation forms approximately every 5 years. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Although like recent generations, like I kind of said with the Nintendo Switch, have extended their periods due to revisions and re-releases rather than just like a brand new tech being introduced. So like the PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3, I think, re-released with like, oh, this is the PlayStation Slim, and like the Nintendo Switch has like the Nintendo Switch Lite and like the Nintendo Switch like OLED screen kind of thing. So they're kind of like revitalizing themselves instead of coming out with brand new tech. What's your question? You have it on the tip of your tongue.
It's right there. Where is Oculus in this? Like VR? Is that a part of this or no?
Not in the official like generational list because I think this is specific to consoles rather than having your VR set, because VRs typically need to have, as far as I know, I don't know that much about VR.
Sure.
Kind of makes me sick when I wear it. But like VR typically needs like a computer to function.
It needs a console or something.
Yeah. So usually like it's sticky. The VR headset, the Oculus, whatever, is riding along as an accessory of a console or just being paired with these are just computers.
Got it. Okay. So you're not getting the Vision Pro anytime soon?
Oh, fuck no. No. It's interesting. We'll have to talk about it at some point, but I'm not getting into it. So new generation forms approximately every 5 years. Recent generations have extended because of the re-releases. And this actually, this new generation being created every 5 years follows Moore's law of technology.
Tell me more.
Nice. So Moore's law of technology is read as follows: the number of transistors in a computer chip doubles every 2 years with minimal rise in cost, increasing processing power while lowering the cost per transistor.
Oh, okay.
And it was just this observation that this guy Moore made, and he was like, yeah, this will happen. And then like he successfully predicted like 30 years of technology being advanced.
That's
crazy.
I
was like, that's fucked up. That's so cool. And so that's like why we saw like memory cards becoming so massive but remaining cheap. Because like memory used to be so fucking expensive, but now that we have more powerful computer chips and whatnot, we're able to double our memory while reducing cost. Crazy.
Nice.
Thanks, more. We're getting to the topic soon. Don't worry.
I'm on the board. I'm riding along.
I'm going to say the titular question in a moment.
I like that you are a little precursor.
I'm leading up to
it. It's a cold open.
So for those of you wondering, and I know that you're wondering this, the first home video game console was the Magnavox Odyssey, and it was released in 1972 and started the first generation of consoles.
Okay. I think I've heard of the Odyssey.
Yeah, it's kind of like it was the first home game console, so everyone's like, oh, wow, this is cool. Historical.
Yeah.
Others in the first generation included Atari Pong.
Nice.
Sometimes also known as Atari Home Pong, just because the Pong machine was like an old a giant arcade machine.
Yeah.
And so they kind of had to differentiate that. It was like, this is your home version. And then there was also the Coleco Telstar series.
I remember Coleco.
Hell yeah, you do.
Oh yeah, I do.
That was from our Universal versus Nintendo episode, I believe. So these consoles obviously were very drastically different from the ones that we know and love today, and even the ones that we knew when we grew up, when we were growing up. So these machines were basically just using 2D images, simple geometric shapes, with very simple games. And what I learned, which was fascinating, was that these were machines that were built mostly to play either a limited amount of games or a very specific game, like the Atari Home Pong was.
Okay.
And it's because like these games were shipped with game cartridges that you would like put into it.
Sure. Yeah.
But those cards didn't technically have any games on them. They just changed the circuit pathways in the machine, in the console, to make the console play that game. So like there wasn't anything on the card itself, and there wasn't any game data on the card. All the game data was on the console. It just like built a bridge for the circuit to use these parts to play Pitfall, for instance.
Interesting.
Right?
When does that... But N64 is not the same way.
I believe so. I think once we get to like the third or fourth generation, that's when you start having... Yeah, because the N64, I believe it had game data on the cartridge itself. But today, we're actually going to be focusing on the fifth generation, which is part of the N64.
Okay.
This is also known as the 3D era.
Ooh.
So this generation lasted from 1993 all the way to 2006.
Oh, dang.
And the things that kind of marked this generation were the CPU had 32 and 64-bit graphic capabilities and ran from 12 to 100 megahertz. The memory standing tall from anywhere from 2 to 4.5 megabytes. That's smaller than like a text you can send today.
Okay.
And it utilized game cartridges as well as optical media or discs.
Okay.
So this was huge, entering this 3D era. So, my titular question. Love saying titular.
I know.
What do you know about the PlayStation 1?
I know that I had it. But I feel like the PlayStation 2 was more prominent for our generation.
Okay.
I feel like I remember PlayStation 1, but I remember like Super Nintendo more than PlayStation 1, and then I remember PlayStation 2 more than I remember PlayStation 1.
Fascinating that you remember the Super Nintendo more. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe it was just like the way that I grew up. Because also like Super Nintendo, we had like Duck Hunt and like Dr. Mario, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so like, I don't know. But I feel like we did have PlayStation 1. What does it look like?
I'll pull you up a picture. It was like a gray rectangle.
Mm-hmm. Like they all were?
No, well, fair.
Because the PlayStation 2 had the disc in the middle, right?
No. So this was the PlayStation 1.
Oh. Give me PlayStation 2.
This was the PlayStation 2.
Oh. Okay, so in my head, I was thinking of the PlayStation 1. I do remember the PlayStation 2, but I was thinking of the PlayStation 1. Oh,
Okay.
that's crazy.
Yeah, because the PlayStation 2 had a slim version where it had, like, instead of a disc tray, like you popped open the disc.
Yeah, it slid out. You popped it in, right?
But the PlayStation 1 was this giant
Square. Yeah.
gray rectangle with a giant CD drive in the center of it.
I do remember that.
With two big buttons.
I remember that. Yeah. Okay.
So that's the PlayStation 1.
Okay.
For me, the PlayStation 1 and N64 were huge parts of my childhood.
Sure.
I mean, like, I played a fuck ton on both because my cousin had the N64. I got one of my friends, my elementary school friends, actually gave me his old PlayStation 1.
Oh my god!
Because I think like they got a Sega or something like that, maybe a Dreamcast. And so they were like, "Yeah, here you go." I was like, "Fuck, thanks." It was awesome. I also played a lot of NES, which was the third generation. So that's where like the original Super Mario Brothers games were on and whatnot. Gauntlet 2. I think I played a lot of Gauntlet 2 with my brother. What's that?
Was Sega after PlayStation 1?
Sega was in the game before Sony was.
Right.
So Sega, like they had the Saturn, I believe, was part of the fourth generation, and then like they had another one in the third generation as well.
Okay. Remember the black one? It had like the black like curved remote.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
I believe that's the Saturn.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because then their Dreamcast came in later.
I didn't like the Dreamcast.
A little bit later when they were able to do 3D graphics.
Got it. Okay.
I had mixed feelings about the Dreamcast.
I feel like that kind of failed, right?
Yeah, it did. It didn't, like, they came in late into the 3D game.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, it didn't do too well. And there was, like, I don't really remember it entirely because, again, it was my same cousin who had the N64 wound up buying himself the Dreamcast.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, you were able to put a cartridge in the controller, but, like, you still needed discs. I was very confused. I just loved surfing around on the streets of, what was that? I don't remember the city, but, like, it was Sonic 2. Had a really great soundtrack to it.
Well, because also the Dreamcast came out, and then GameCube came out not too long after that.
I'm not too sure.
Okay.
But I think
like I feel like the GameCube like overtook the Dreamcast in a way, unless I'm misremembering time.
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway,
I didn't do research on Nintendo. I stuck with Sony.
Sorry.
So I played a lot of NES, which is third gen, some computer games, and then also my dad's old Atari 2600, which was from the second generation of consoles.
Oh, wow.
That one was great. You had Pitfall, you had a boxing game. It was phenomenal. So, fifth generation consoles.
Yes.
These were a massive improvement from previous generations. This was the first gen of consoles that had true 3D polygon graphics with texture mapping. So, to us, they didn't look super realistic, but back in the day it was huge. It was like, holy cow, these graphics are incredible, especially on the old tube TVs. Like, you got away with a lot more stuff. These consoles could also now use CDs, allowing for bigger storage capabilities on the disc themselves, which improved audio quality and game quality. This also allowed for more space for game files on the disc itself. Game cartridges were getting bigger and able to hold more information on them.
Sure.
So like for the N64, you were able to put all of Super Smash Bros. On your game cartridge, but discs were becoming more prevalent.
Got it.
Prevalent?
Relevant?
Yeah.
Prevalent?
Also, in this generation, we had a lot of display resolution and color depth improvements, which also helped with the graphics quality.
Got it.
So the original PlayStation, we're talking about the PlayStation.
Thank you.
All right, I already asked the question. The original PlayStation, there wasn't any need to designate the number yet back then. was released on December 3rd in 1994 in Japan and September 9th in 1995 in North America.
Okay.
It was originally developed to be a direct competition with Nintendo's N64, as well as the Sega Saturn that we mentioned earlier, but it actually didn't start out that way. It's a fun little roller coaster of history.
Okay.
So Sony and Nintendo actually intended to work together to create a CD-ROM add-on for the SNES, or the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which was the second iteration of the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES.
Yeah.
And they were going to call this device the SNES CD or PlayStation, but there's a space between play and station in this one.
PlayStation.
And this was going to happen in 1988. So we're going back to the 80s,
Okay.
late 80s. The height of advancement in video games.
Yeah.
So this partnership developed when Ken Kutaragi, a Sony executive, secretly developed a sound processor for Nintendo to use in their SNES. Ken was just so tickled and excited by how much his daughter was enjoying the NES, that he was like, I want to work with Nintendo. I want to help them make a better product that my daughter can enjoy.
Sure.
Might be putting words in his mouth, but
But that's a good vibe.
Yeah, it's a vibe.
Yeah.
And so he was heading a hardware engineer division at Sony. Ken demonstrated the capabilities of his new sound processor card, this SPC 700, and convinced Nintendo to use it for the next generation of home video game consoles, the SNES. He was like, it's going to make your game sound better. We're going to get more fun out of this. My daughter's going to love it. Come on, use it.
Use it.
The exact conversation that happened in the boardroom of Nintendo.
This is verbatim transcript.
So this partnership developed, and with some little bit of backlash from the Sony executives of Ken doing this secretly, they realized it was like, you know what, this is actually going to be a good partnership. Let's go on with it.
Yeah.
So Sony then became under contract to produce these SPC 700s for Nintendo. And with that already underway, already being a great relationship, Nintendo was like, you know what? Let's further this partnership and have you guys develop a CD-ROM add-on for the SNES.
Okay.
Let's make money together.
Sure.
So this new console thing was going to ideally play both the cartridges that we're familiar with, as well as a new CD format dubbed the Super Disc, which was also being designed by Sony.
Okay.
And this new contract actually was great for Sony because it would give Sony the sole rights to every game developed on the Super Disc, including any licensing of music and films that could also be put on these discs.
Oh, dang.
So they get all the control.
Yeah.
And Nintendo's like, whoa, I don't know about that.
Right.
And so after reading over the contract, they're like, we're liking this deal less and less. So we're going to jump ahead to 1991.
Okay.
Sony and Nintendo have been working together for 3 years now, developing the SPC 700s for the SNES, trying to come up with prototypes for this new console, the PlayStation with a space.
Yeah.
And now we're in 1991. The Consumer Electronics Show, or CES, was supposed to be where the Nintendo PlayStation with a space was to be announced.
Okay.
However, with growing concerns of how much control Sony was having over all of this new product, all of this new development, Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi ripped up, figuratively, the contract from 1988, the original sound processor contract, and ending the Sony-Nintendo partnership. So he went all the way back and was like, we're done with Sony. Like, this is crazy.
Wow.
We need to get rid of this contract entirely. So
Just to fully dissolve that is kind of insane.
a bit of an extreme
reaction. Yeah.
But like Sony was going to get their claws on everything that Nintendo was developing.
Sure.
Which is a lot of money, but like
you could have
could have written an amendment or something.
There could have been more like negotiation happening there, right?
Right. So while Nintendo did have a stronghold on the video game market, they also feared Sony for their better R&D development.
Okay.
I'm sorry, for their R&D department.
Okay, sure.
I would have said development. That's ridiculous.
How dare you?
So right before the 1991 CES, Hiroshi canceled the PlayStation with a space SNES CD attachment without telling Sony.
Oh, shit.
None of the news gets back to Sony.
How do you just... Okay,
I don't know.
And expect that'll be fine. No worries.
Right. So Hiroshi sends the president of Nintendo of America and our lawyer friend, Howard Lincoln, if you remember him from the Universal versus Nintendo episode.
Howard Lincoln was second to John Kirby?
Lincoln found Kirby.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, because Lincoln was in a lot of the original negotiations between Nintendo and Universal, and then Lincoln was like, hey, Kirby, go fuck these guys up. And then Kirby just like came in and kicked ass. But now Howard Lincoln is the bad guy. So he makes a deal. He gets sent to... he gets sent over to Europe to make a deal with Sony's rival, Philips.
Okay.
So now Nintendo has this contract with Philips where that would ensure Nintendo's 100% control over current and new licenses produced on Philips machines. So they wanted Philips to do the exact same thing that Sony was already working on.
Yeah.
So, crazy times. Sony finds out about this, all of this shit, all of these shenanigans, 2 days before the CES was supposed to start.
Damn.
And they were already geared up, ready to go to announce this awesome new product, this crazy new add-on that they've been working on for years and years.
This partnership? Right.
So, unable to find a solution, making call after call, even to Philips, Ken, the Sony exec who initiated the partnership with Nintendo, goes on stage anyway to reveal this partnership with Nintendo and the new PlayStation console with a space. The next day, Howard Lincoln, the lawyer, steps on stage to announce Nintendo's partnership with Philips and would no longer be working with Sony. This has been dubbed, quote, the greatest ever betrayal, end quote, in the video game industry.
That's nuts. That's
just nuts. This corporate bullshit.
Like, you couldn't have just, like, kept, like, come on. Just keep it in the boardroom. Like, why do you have to, like, be petty and announce that to the entire
industry? Yeah. Yeah. So, Ken, after all of this, he would actually eventually go on to get the nickname Father of the PlayStation without the space.
Sure.
Despite the drama at the 1991 CES, he still knew that Sony had to get in the home video game console market. He was like, this is still growing exponentially. We need to get our mitts on this.
Yeah.
And also surprisingly, negotiations were still in play between Nintendo and Sony to figure out some type of deal using Ken's audio chip and the PlayStation with a space having a port for SNES games. I don't know why.
Right. You just, what? Why would that not just immediately dissolve?
So, like, they were just trying to refigure out ways of who would have control and who would get the most money, essentially. So this new deal would ensure Nintendo would own all the rights and keep the majority of the profits from this new console and all of the games developed for this add-on.
Okay.
And there was so much work into this project that 200 prototypes were actually created and software had begun development, even though many higher ups at Sony didn't like the idea of getting into the video game market.
Sure.
They said that they were still very hesitant partnering with Nintendo, especially after all the bullshit.
Right.
And Sony's American branch even considered talks with Sega to like go around Nintendo to be like, stop this partnership. We have these 200 prototypes. Let's produce a CD-ROM based console with Sega instead.
Interesting. Okay.
Because the Sega Saturn was a cartridge console still.
Yeah.
But Sega Tokyo vetoed Sega USA, saying, quote, "That's a stupid idea. Sony doesn't know how to make hardware. They don't know how to make software either. Why do we want to do this?"
Oh my God.
So
Why is
Sony-
everyone shitting
right.
on Sony? Jesus.
So Sony's kind of just left floundering around.
Yeah.
They've been an audio-visual company,
Sure.
creating like, headphones, music stuff, TVs, whatnot.
Yeah.
So everyone was like, no, they don't know anything about video games. Fuck them.
Wild.
Okay.
You're like, they're literally audio visual.
Right. So on May 4th, 1992, Sony said, fuck this. Fuck you guys. We're going to make our own video games with blackjack and hookers. And on that day, they cut all ties with Nintendo.
I'm sorry, with blackjack and hookers?
Not a direct quote.
Right. Okay.
That might
Just
have
wanted to
been a quote from Bender Bending Rodriguez from Futurama. But like, you know what? Same vibe.
Who's to say?
Maybe Bender was quoting the Sony executives.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Uh-huh.
So that June in 1992, a meeting was held with a lot of the Sony execs, board members, higher ups, the bigwigs. And Ken, this sneaky guy,
This little guy.
he's always working on something in his lab at home, because he revealed yet another secret project that he'd been developing. And his prototype that he showed would include a CD-ROM based console, crazy immersive 3D graphics, include his new chip that would accommodate 1 million logic gates. Logic gates, I had to look this up, are essentially a thing that performs basic but fundamental logic functions. Like, it's just kind of, we're allowing this information to go through.
Oh, okay. Sure.
And so like it had all of these crazy things ready to go. He was like, I have this phenomenal idea. I got shit working. I'm cooking.
Yeah.
We're doing great. Despite all of this, there was still a lot of opposition to Ken at this meeting.
Oh.
They wanted Sony to stay in their lane as an audiovisual company like they have been for years and years.
Sure.
And they also said, you know what, Nintendo and Sega, they're toy manufacturers. They're creating toys. We don't want to be a toy manufacturer. These consoles are toys.
Wild. It's just crazy,
Right.
the like different mentality surrounding video games at that time of just like, no, they're toys. No, they're
Right.
like, they can't do that. They're audiovisual.
We're
Like,
not going to make any money.
you're all doing the same fucking thing. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Jesus.
But then at this meeting, Ken was like, hey, remember back at that conference when they just humiliated us and they just slighted me? Wasn't that terrible? And everyone's like, oh shit, yeah, they fucked us up. So we're going to fuck them up now.
I like that he was like, this tactic isn't working. Let's try anger.
Right. So like once he reminded everyone the humiliation and slight he suffered from Nintendo, everyone was like, we're on board.
Done.
Let's go for it. So Sony had already bought the name PlayStation from Yamaha way back before they started developing everything. Yamaha owned the name PlayStation.
Oh, why?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's Yamaha. They make keyboards and motorcycles.
And that's my question.
Right. And so they already had the name. They had already done a lot of work previously.
Sure.
And so Sony continued to develop the PlayStation, but this time, no space.
Space will get you.
PlayStation.
PlayStation.
So Ken and a few members of his team were shifted over to the Sony Music Entertainment Japan, SMEJ. Just another branch of the big Sony umbrella.
Okay.
This shift away from the main headquarters actually helped maintain the relationship between Sony and Philips. Not sure what was going on.
Yeah.
Like how that helped them maintain the relationship, but Sony and Philips were working on this other project together, even though they were rivals, I guess. I don't know.
Well, because Philips is still working with Nintendo, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think there was just a lot of corporate moving parts.
Yeah. I mean, if there's no non-compete clause, then
Right. So Sony and Philips were working on this different project unrelated to PlayStation called the MMCD development project.
okay.
MMCD stands for Multimedia Compact Disc. This later turned into the digital video disc, or DVDs.
Oh,
Wild, right?
Yeah.
So Sony and Philips are working on that. Ken is now at SMEJ, and moving to the music department was actually phenomenal for them, since the games for this new console were going to be manufactured on CD-ROMs, which was a format the SMEJ was already very familiar with,
Sure.
due to their experience with audio CDs.
Yeah.
So eventually, after a lot more R&D is done and a lot more work is done on this PlayStation console, Sony Computer Entertainment, SCE, is established by Sony. And it's established by Sony and SMEJ. I don't know why both need to approve of this if it's all under Sony.
Right. But sure.
Sure. And this branch is created to manage the company's video game console development. And so finally, on October 27th, 1993, SCE announced their entrance into the video game market with the PlayStation. No space.
No space.
No space.
Okay.
So the development of this console gets a little technical. A lot of numbers, a lot of acronyms. I'm only going to share the highlights.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't want to bore everyone anymore.
You could never bore us.
Have you heard my voice?
Get out of here.
All right. So these are the highlights from the development part of the PlayStation. No space. So we actually have Sega to thank for a little bit of this. Actually, a lot of it. Because of the release of Sega's Virtua Fighter in 1993 gave a clear direction for the new PlayStation. Virtua Fighter was an arcade game, like full arcade box kind of deal. And it was the first arcade fighting game to have fully 3D polygon graphics.
Oh, okay.
Previously, it was mostly 2D kind of stuff.
Yeah. And
Sony realized, oh shit, you can make games that have 3D graphics. And this is really popular. Virtua Fighter became one of the most popular games at all the arcades across the globe.
Okay.
That had the box.
Sure.
So Sony was like, we can do 3D games. We don't have to do the has-been 2D sprite-based graphics. We can be the future.
Sure.
The other great thing that came through the development of this was that helped with them being part of the SMEJ previously was that they were able to implement crazy high audio quality into their games, utilizing this thing called Red Book Audio from the CD-ROM format in its games. And Red Book Audio, I guess I also had to look this up, was the standard for high quality audio CDs before the MP3 format was developed.
Oh, okay. Got it. Heard.
Another wild thing about the development. It's wild to me. It's going to be wild to someone else.
I'm so ready.
I know you didn't play video games, but here you are.
Here we are.
Okay, so Sony actually didn't have any in-house game developers, unlike Sega and Nintendo. They didn't have a video game department. They didn't have anyone to create games for them.
Sure.
Sega and Nintendo, they did. They had a whole house of people ready to create games for them.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that.
Right.
They're like, we built the console. Now what?
Where are we going to get games from?
Right.
So they wound up reaching out to over 100 different companies to develop and or port their arcade games over to the PlayStation. This got them games, really popular arcade games like Ridge Racer, Mortal Kombat 3, and Tekken to eventually release on the console.
Okay.
And I believe Ridge Racer was actually like a day one release for PlayStation. Like you were able to buy both at the same time, and then everyone was like, "Fucking yeah, Ridge Racer!"
Just like that.
Yeah, direct quote from everybody,
from the entire world.
Eventually, though, in 1993, Sony acquired this company called Psygnosis.
Okay.
Psygnosis. Psygnosis.
Okay.
Which was a development company based in Liverpool. Now, Psygnosis actually played a very important role in obviously being their first in-house developers, but also they were able to convince Sony to use a PC-based development system to create the console. So originally, Sony wanted to send out this new different machine to develop games on, and this is so a little insight into the industry is like part of the R&D for a new console is to like simulate and create the console on what are called dev kits.
Okay.
Development kits.
Sure.
And so Sony was like, yeah, here's like this kind of clunky machine. You're going to use it to create the PlayStation and PlayStation games, like all the software for it.
Okay.
But Psygnosis was like, can we use a computer? Like,
right. Makes sense.
We're familiar with using computers. Like, let's just use computer, please. And so they were able to convince Sony to switch over, to scrap the whole like new clunky machine. And they're like, yeah, we'll just use computers. This will be great. And so using this PC-based dev system, this dev kit, actually made it cheaper, more efficient, and more accessible for Psygnosis and other developers to design software for the new console.
Okay.
So like they didn't have to send out to all these different companies this new clunky machine. They're like, you can just use your computer. Right. Or use this PC-based system instead of this whole new different system.
That's great.
Another advantage that Sony had over its main competitors, Sega and Nintendo, was that Sony didn't favor its own products over non-Sony companies. Like Nintendo was sure. I'm only going to play Nintendo games.
Right.
Sony was like, I could have anyone.
I don't care.
I don't care as long as it works on my machine. Let's go. And so SCE actually worked really closely with third-party developers to give them anything they needed to create cool products.
Sure.
They're like, here you go. We have call centers. You can talk to us anytime you want. Like we have 3 different call centers across the globe. Like call us. We'll help you out.
That's great.
And the other thing that also gave them advantage was the use of CD-ROMs. This was huge. The CDs made it cheaper and faster for the games/system development, which was another thing that was attractive for software developers. They were able to use CDs easier on their computers and whatnot. And CDs acted as an image generation system rather than a data replay system.
Okay.
Now, while there were a lot of perks to the PlayStation, some developers actually wound up complaining that it was a little sluggish compared to a regular computer, a regular PC, personal computer. So developers wanted more RAM, but Ken was adamant that increasing the RAM would push the price point of the console too high. And his whole goal was maintaining this balance of high performance, low cost, easy to program.
Sure.
And by maintaining the level of hardware in the console, he was able to achieve that.
Sure.
So, finally, development ends May 10th, 1994. The name and final design of the PlayStation was revealed at a press conference. All good. All
happens. Okay.
Happens.
Everyone's excited?
Very excited.
Okay.
So, that's all the development.
Okay.
We're just going to get into just a little bit more drama, and then the story ends, I promise.
I love the drama. I'm here for the drama. Wait. I have a question, though.
Yeah.
So, you talk about how Sony always was like independent, like developers, and didn't really care if it was a Sony product or not, right? Yeah. Because they didn't have in-house until...
Right, Psygnosis.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is it still like that today? Or do they produce their own video games now?
So Psygnosis wound up becoming fully becoming in-house,
right.
like fully be getting under the Sony umbrella. Like Psygnosis is no more. Now that's just Sony.
Got it.
I don't remember the exact year that happened, but shortly after 1993.
Okay.
So Sony still does develop their own games, but there are a multitude of other developers out there that create their own games. Like there's, like Rockstar with Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption. You have Naughty Dog with Uncharted and The Last of Us.
So then they try to sell their game to one of the larger companies? Or like, how does that work?
Well, for some of them, with some companies will create like console exclusives where they're like, hey, we're going to give you a really good game. It's going to be really great. Everyone's going to want to buy your console and play this game.
Sure.
That was like Halo with Xbox.
Yeah. Okay.
Huge. That was huge for Microsoft. But then other times they're like, oh yeah, we're going to release it on all platforms. Like everyone's going to be able to play this game. We're going to develop it and port it to all these other different consoles so and everyone can play.
Do you have to have that company's permission though?
I feel like there's some type of licensing issue that needs to happen, especially for the bigger developers. For PC games, for computer games, I don't really know, because I think you can just like kind of code something and release it on Steam and everyone's like, yeah, cool. Because like Steam's open source, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Wrong. See in the comments.
Asterisk.
Right.
Okay, heard. Got it. And now, are there people who are like adamantly PC versus console, or is everyone...
yeah. No, the console wars are still strong, and then there's also a big PC versus console,
just in general,
war.
Got it. Okay.
There's this. I never really liked the phrase, but there's like PC master race.
Okay, we're not doing that.
Yeah, and that phrase has been around. Well after the 40s.
That would make me not want to be a PC person.
Yeah. And it's all because I can put so much hardware into, like, I can put my own hardware into my computer.
Sure.
I can have this really nice monitor that will be able to have a refresh rate of X and whatnot. Like, you can really soup up your computer, make games look really pretty. Fine.
Sure.
I have been one that never wanted to be part of this war or this discussion.
Yeah.
Because I've been both a console and computer player all my life. I never really had a souped up computer.
Sure.
But like, I don't know. It's a lot. And like people just get really dramatic about it. So.
It's a little, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Battle of the nerds. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right.
And I'm not here for that. I'm just here to play my games.
Let me play my games.
Go on. All right. So the development happens. We announce the PlayStation. And now we're going to release the PlayStation on December 3rd, 1994. It was released in Japan at the price of 39,800 yen.
Okay.
Which is $264.48 American.
Oh, wow.
Which in today money is $544.89.
Oh my God, $550?
Yeah, which actually surprisingly tracks for modern consoles. Like everyone's like, oh wow, consoles are so expensive. But like if you adjust for inflation, like it's
actually makes sense.
Equivalent.
Is a PlayStation 5 like 500?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact price tag, but
around there?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
wow.
It's somewhere between like 5 and 6.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So. But like I remember like the PlayStation and even the PlayStation 2 being like, seeing like an ad for it in Best Buy or whatever, being like, it's like $250, $270, whatever it was. And like in my memory of it being like, man, consoles, like they were so, like they used to be so cheap, but then like I did the inflation calculator. I was like, all right, okay,
never mind.
So on the first day that the PlayStation was released, 100,000 units were sold, and within 6 months, 2 million were sold.
Oh my God.
The popularity of the new console being only sold in Japan actually created kind of this behind the scenes, what some might call the gray market. Not entirely a black market because it's not super illegal stuff, but like it's not official. where people would buy PlayStation consoles and like ship them to North America and Europe. Like they would buy them from Japan and then have them shipped to different continents.
Oh, dang.
Right.
Okay.
So like, again, not illegal. It's just they're not officially on the market in those areas.
Right. That's okay.
So at the very first E3, which is this big video game expo, this happened on May 11th of 1995 in LA. Sega was showing off their new Saturn console. And that they announced that they would immediately release this console in North America for $399. This surprised everyone. And it actually wound up hurting their sales for the Saturn because none of the stores, none of the markets were ready for this.
Yeah.
And so one company actually like canceled their purchase of the Sega Saturn. They're like, no, fuck you guys. We're going to cancel this. We're not going to buy anything. Like, we're not ready. We're not prepared to sell this. You can't just
drop that
on everybody and say you're going to sell it. So this was all of a competition for Sega because they knew that Sony was going to be presenting as well.
Right.
And so Sony wound up presenting next after Sega had announced Saturn being released immediately for $399. Sony presented, touted they'll be selling the PlayStation in North America for $299. They're like,
suckers,
we'll beat you.
Yeah.
But they also weren't going to release it immediately. They were like, no, we still have a set plan date to release this. We need to get you the shipments and all of that and prepare for it properly. Idiots.
Because Sony knows what the fuck they're doing.
Right. And also, weirdly, Michael Jackson was there.
What?
To showcase some games for Sony.
How random is that?
Right? Gotta love it. So, on September 9th, 1995, the PlayStation was released in North America, and almost the entire initial shipment of 100,000 units were sold in advance. And shops immediately were running out of the consoles and accessories. So even before the ships hit the shore, already all sold. And they sold more units of the PlayStation in 2 days than Sega had sold the Saturn in 5 months.
Oh my god!
So it's like, fuck you, and that's why Sega kind of just
pittered out.
Yeah.
Womp, womp.
So this marked the beginning of Sony's station in the home video game console market. They've been holding strong ever since with the release of the PS5 in 2020. I can't believe it's already been 4 years since the PS5 came out.
Yeah, true.
It feels like just yesterday. But, that's COVID time for you.
Hey, baby.
The PS1, which we now have to designate, that is the first one, sold about 102.49 million units worldwide as of 2023.
That's nuts.
Yeah, wild.
That's nuts.
And Sony would become the home for many favorite characters such as Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, Snake, Lara Croft, and many, many others.
I like the way you ended that. I have two questions for you. One, with Sega, who owns their property now?
Sega still does. Sega's still around. They make games.
Oh,
but
they
just don't
consoles.
Yeah, they don't. They haven't made a console in decades.
Got it.
I think the Dreamcast was their last console.
Thank you. And then the other part of the other question is, what do you think the next generation looks like for games?
I don't think it's going to be like a Ready Player One situation for quite some time.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Does that?
Yeah. Okay. I actually know what you're talking about.
I think VR still has a long way to go.
Sure.
To be readily available for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what more they can improve on aside from just general graphics quality and audio quality. Because like, sure, there was a jump between PS4 and PS5, but like weirdly, there haven't been a lot of games that have been released just on the PS5. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of developers are still releasing games for both the PS4 and PS5. So like what this means is like they're not using the full capabilities of this new console. Like it's still kind of being held back so that it's an easier port between both consoles. And that's kind of because when the PlayStation 5 was released back in 2020, it was just like gone immediately. It was really hard to acquire in a console.
Got it.
There were a lot of people buying them to like resell, like buying the whole shipment's worth of a Best Buy and be like, yeah, I'm going to resell these on eBay. Fuck you guys. It really sucked ass.
Yeah.
And like you would be entered in a lottery system to buy one.
Jesus.
It was terrible. I hated it. Like you would follow Twitter accounts that'd be like, oh, like there's word of a shipment being sent to like Best Buys or Targets, and you'd like go and like try to refresh like your Target page and try to buy one. It was crazy.
That's insanity.
It was awful. I will never do that again. I think I probably bought the PlayStation 5 way too soon, like way too early. I got it in 2020. It was whatever. One of my friends helped me out with it, and like my PlayStation 4 still worked. It was just like this horrible like consumerism fog in my head that was like, I gotta get it.
Especially someone who's so anti-capitalism.
I know. I really fell for it. I just wanted the new console.
One new thing.
Because it promised like so much more, and like, yeah, it's a great machine. I love it. Play it almost every day. But it's just like, I could have waited.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think developers are utilizing all of the hardware fully, but they're already talking about the PS6, and it's like, whoa, guys.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Calm down.
So
now, do they bring the PSP back?
God, well, okay. So here's a funny thing.
Mm-hmm.
They, yes and no. I mean, I would love it.
Yeah.
I think they would be great, but like Sony is releasing this handheld thing that looks like it'll break in 2 seconds. Because it's essentially,
you showed me this.
Yeah. It's essentially like this. You take your PlayStation 5 controller, cut it in half, and then put a piece of glass in between it. And that's like this new console, this new handheld that they're coming up with to compete with the Nintendo Switch.
Right.
But they're doing it all wrong. Because like with the Switch, you can go and fuck off like 10 miles away from your house and play whatever game you want. It's all right there in your handheld. With this thing that Sony's coming out with, it's like, oh, you need to be connected to the same Wi-Fi that your console is. And you're essentially only like streaming games from your console to this handheld. So like, yeah, it's great if like mom and dad are watching TV and you want to play your game and you only have one TV in your house, which I don't think that's a thing anymore nowadays. It was when I was a kid.
Sure.
But like, oh, like I still want to play my games, but like whatever, like someone else is using the gaming TV.
Right.
And so like you can just go sit in a different chair and play on your handheld, but like you can't go anywhere with it. Like it's not giving you the multiplayer capabilities that like a Switch does.
Right.
It's not portable at all. So, and it looks flimsy as hell.
Uh-huh.
So
it's gonna get snapped in half.
Yeah, I wish they brought the PSP back. That thing was
PSP was great.
Awesome. Once they added that second analog stick, phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
I think that was the PSP Vita that they did that, but like still, it was great.
Maybe holograms are next. You hate this discussion every time I bring it up.
I do. And that's the PlayStation 1. Thanks for going on this nerdy journey with me.
Thank you.
About video game history. I love video game history. It's so fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Like to make Crash Bandicoot, they hacked the PlayStation. It was crazy.
Seriously?
Yeah. Love that story. I think it's if you look up War Stories Crash Bandicoot on YouTube,
mm-hmm.
you'll have like one of the head guys from Naughty Dog who developed Crash Bandicoot tell his whole story of it. Like, yeah, we had to hack into the PlayStation to make this game work, and like we did all these tricks and stuff. I was like, fuck, that's so cool.
That's cool.
Look it up, watch it. It's great. After this episode, go and look.
Go do it. All right. Well, thank you, Devin. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I have to do the sign off stuff.
Yeah,
thanks everybody for sticking around. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. But if you don't follow us or subscribe to us yet, please check us out on all the social media at WDYK_podcast. See you next time, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. Thanks for being here. Okay, bye.
Bye.